Do you know the leading cause of death in Canada? According to StatsCan or Statistics Canada, the official government website, it's malignant neoplasms, cancer. In 2024, there were 85,589 recorded deaths. The second leading cause was diseases of heart, 57,982 in 2024. Oh, wait. Stats Canada missed something. The leading cause wasn't 85,000. It was 102,638 in 2024. The leading cause of death in Canada is abortion. Surgical or medical, poison or vacuum. That's how many were reported. Is there any sort of justification that can be made for this practice? People come up with plenty of reasons, and we're going to look at some of them today. You might think it's kind of soon for another podcast on abortion, but this one is very different from the first, I hope. If you listened to episode 2, it was very historical, very facts-focused. But today we're more focused on some of the arguments in favor of abortion, what they mean, and how we can argue against them, or even just ignore them, to be honest. I chose this week for our second abortion-related episode because it's a celebration of pro-life here in Canada. The March for Life is Thursday, May 14. That's tomorrow. I, unfortunately, will not be attending, but it's certainly a cause we can all keep in our prayers. Today, we're mostly focusing on the two biggest arguments you will hear from conservatives in defense of abortion. Generally, they will say something like, I'm pro-life, and I think abortion should be illegal. Except in the case of rape or incest, or when the mother's life is in jeopardy. And I think as compassionate, caring people, it's easy for us to say, well, that's fair. I don't want people to die, and I'm not going to add more pain or problems to someone who has been raped. And then we try to focus on all the other reasons for abortion and getting rid of those ones. Since most of my audience is conservative, and I'm assuming most of your interactions are with other conservative Christians, I want to address these two arguments to help you argue against them. Welcome to Canadian Rubies. We're a podcast for Christian women examining culture, politics, and religion through a Reformed Christian worldview. We've covered topics such as feminism, hate speech, medical assistance in dying, and literacy. Follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts so you don't miss any future episodes. And thanks for being here. Before we dive into our topic, I just want to take a little moment to celebrate that this is our 10th episode, which probably doesn't seem like much. But did you know that there are over 4.5 million podcasts in the world? But only around 1 million have 10 or more episodes. So I guess that puts us in the top 25% of podcasts. The bar was not set high. Obviously, we're still a work in progress, stumbling our way through and figuring it out as we go, but we're still going. Hopefully you've been enjoying what we've done so far, and I promise it will only keep getting better. On a side note, when I was editing the last episode, I realized I talk so slowly. Please speed up your podcasts if you want to. I usually listen to podcasts on 1.2 to 1.5 times speed, depending on how focused I can be. I don't actually want to talk too much faster because I know that's not helpful for some people. But if you're getting bored of me, just crank up that speed. Today's podcast might sound a little bit different. Maybe a little bit less fluid, maybe not. I'm starting to switch from like a fully scripted podcast to more notes-based that I can talk off of, which is exciting and intimidating at the same time. But you've got to start sometime, and the 10th episode seemed like a good day to do that because practice makes us better, right? Right. So before we get into the arguments for abortion, I wanted to talk about the March for Life that's taking place this week. So some of you may be thinking, I'm pretty sure we already had a March for Life this year. And if you are thinking that, then you might be American or you follow American news, because the US had their March for Life in Washington, D.C. in January, which is the month that they usually hold it. But here in Canada, the March for Life takes place in May. And you may be wondering, why May? Unless you have amazing memory. And then you would know why May 1969 is particularly important. Because in May 1969, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau's Criminal Law Amendment Act was passed by Parliament, which legalized homosexuality, contraceptives, and abortion. So our March for Life takes place in May so that we can fully remember that legalization and why that change in law matters and why we're still fighting against it today. The March for Life is run by the Campaign Life Coalition, which is a pro-life, pro-family organization. In 2016, they actually added MAID to their causes during the March for Life because it's also about protecting life. So March for Life isn't just about abortion, but it is pro-life as a whole. And so we're thinking about all of the ways that we value human life and that we are fighting against a culture that denies that value. This year is the 29th March for Life here in Canada, and the theme for this year is Follow Me, which is taken from Matthew 4, verse 19, when Jesus says to Simon Peter and Andrew, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men," which shows you that the focus of the March for Life is not just pro-life, but also pro-Christianity. That they're not just, as they say, fighting for lives, but they are fighting for souls. And I think that that makes this cause even more important because we're not trying to dumb down the message to just be logic and reason. We are actually saying we're pro-life for a reason. From conception to natural death, we value life and we're not afraid to admit why. So that's really important. If you want to follow along with the March for Life, you can go to the March for Life Canada YouTube channel, and they have videos from the past years. Some pretty cool videos, actually, and there will be lots more coming up for this year. There's also live coverage of the event on EWTN, which is the Eternal Word Television Network. They will have live coverage from 11:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time. The EWTN is like the source for Catholic programming, news, radio, all that sort of thing. You'll remember last episode that I talked about how Reformed Christians and Roman Catholics are just so entrenched in these fights together, these fights like pro-life, which I think is really good. We can and should work together, but we do need to remember that we do differ from them in several different things. Thankfully, we both value life, and so we can work together on that. But that being said, I'm not endorsing all that EWTN has to offer. You may log on or go on to their webpage and see all of these programs and kids videos and that sort of stuff. They have a ton of stuff on there, but it's very Catholic focused from what I can see. So I'm giving it to you as a source for live coverage from the March for Life, and I don't know anything else beyond that. But you should be able to see all of the speeches taking place in Ottawa tomorrow on that network. Then I also think it's really important that the March for Life takes place in May. Well, important. It's just kind of a beautiful coexistence. The March for Life does not claim this reason at all, but we know that May, of course, is when we celebrate Mother's Day. We just had it this past weekend. Not only did you perhaps celebrate this in some way, whether you acknowledged your mom or were acknowledged yourself, but like society as a whole has celebrated Mother's Day. I mean, my Instagram feed was filled with commentary and arguments and claims and so many things about Mother's Day. Sales were everywhere Anybody that comes close to selling flowers had some sort of Mother's Day sales. There was giveaways, and it just kind of inundated you. I'm sure that some of you also felt that way. Just so much, everything was focused around this day. And it's just very strange because we live in a culture that despises motherhood. That's kind of how it feels like the other 360 days out of the year, but we take this 1 week to set aside and be like, oh, we love moms. Moms are really important. But the rest of the year, motherhood is bad for you. It's bad for our culture. It's bad for you to embrace. Motherhood means self-sacrifice. It means serving others. It's focused on babies. It's celebrating life in general. And that is not what our culture is here to celebrate. So, but, a culture that kills its babies and its grandmothers still chooses to commercialize and exploit motherhood. And I guess that we just shouldn't be surprised by that. It's just another opportunity to make money. I'm not against Mother's Day. I'm not saying that it's just a commercialized holiday, but I do think it's ironic or surprising sometimes that our society celebrates it so much and then turns around and gets mad at a pro-life rally. This is not the focus of my episode. I'm just pondering things. I just wonder, is that what Mother's Day is all about? Is it just another opportunity to make money? Or do you think there is a real but somewhat contradictory appreciation of mothers in our current culture? Stay tuned, I guess, for a future episode on motherhood. I'm not sure. But that's not the focus today. Today we're talking about abortion. So let's get into that discussion. The real reason that we're here and the two main arguments by pro-choice advocates that win over a lot of conservative Christians and pro-lifers. So again, the two reasons that we're looking at today are babies conceived in rape or incest. Those categories are usually grouped together. And then also situations where the life of the mother is at risk. Physical life of the mother is the argument that's being made there. First, if you're having a discussion about this with someone, I think it's important to figure out, are those really the only reasons you think abortion should be legal, right? Are you willing to say abortion should be illegal in all cases except these two instances? Okay, generally, pro-choicers are very hesitant to agree that all abortion should be banned except for these two reasons, even though they cite those two reasons when they're arguing against it. So if that's true, if you don't actually want to ban it except for those two reasons, then they're not real reasons. They're just excuses and they're not relevant. Why do we need to argue against these two reasons that don't even matter to the other side? They're just trying to push them on us to say, doesn't this really tug on your heartstrings? How can you possibly go against abortion now? That would make you a bad person. Pro-life is cruel to women. What about a 13-year-old girl who's raped and gets pregnant? Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. But is that the real argument that they're trying to have with you? Or is that just their little excuse? Because these two reasons, they're very rare cases. If we could actually say abortion is illegal for everything except rape and incest and life of the mother, physical life of the mother is in danger, that would be a huge win for the pro-life movement. We would take that, and we would fight against it later on. But let's look at some statistics for a minute before I say way too many times. So I actually couldn't find statistics in Canada for reasons that women have an abortion. But I did find an article from 2021 from Human Life International, and they looked at reasons for abortions that were given by 2.4 million women from 1996 to 2020 in 6 states. First of all, 2.4 million in 6 states. over 24 years. What did they find? 1.14% of abortions. The reason given was to save the life or physical health of the mother. 0.39% were cases of rape or incest. Which means, if you're following along doing the math, less than 2% of abortions. These are the biggest arguments that are given generally if you're having a debate, and they cover less than 2% of the abortions. Okay, that means they're not good reasons. Like, that means that even if those reasons were acceptable, even if we wanted to agree with them, 2,352,000 abortions in this study alone were committed outside of those reasons. So again, just allowing those reasons, that's a lot of lives that are being saved if we just allowed those reasons. If we said, fine, those are the 2 times. Which I would totally advocate that we do that. But I do want to clarify that I am 100% pro-life. No reason is a good enough reason for murder of an unborn child. So let's look at the arguments for these 2 reasons. The problem with working from notes, I have no idea how long I'm rambling on for. My script kind of tells me, I know. Now I'm just talking. This episode could just drag on for hours. It probably won't. Okay, so let's talk about abortion after rape or incest. First of all, like to clarify, I just want to be very clear. Sexual assault of any kind should be met with the full force of the law. I'm not here making excuses for any of this sort of behavior. But I'm just saying this sort of behavior is not an excuse for abortion. We know and are taught from a very young age, 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 toddlers playing together, one hits the other. We do not advocate revenge. We do not advocate the second toddler hitting them back, let alone that second toddler turning around and slapping a baby in the face. Like, that's just such a small example, right? But 2 wrongs don't make a right from the beginning. The only person who should be punished is the person who did the action. Again, think of how incensed a bunch of middle school students are if the whole class suffers a consequence for the actions of one member. They know that it's wrong. They know who should be suffering the consequence of their actions. There is no difference between a child conceived in rape and a child conceived in a loving union. They look the same. The ultrasounds do not present differently. The babies do not present differently. A child should not be killed because of the actions of its father. And doing so does not save the mother. That's the reality. An abortion after rape cannot, will not remove any of the trauma or the pain or the memories. They might think it will. But usually, it's just going to add to it. In a 2024 article, Good Health Psych said that women who have an abortion are 81% more likely to have mental health issues. That's a sad fact, but it shouldn't be surprising because remember the study that we looked at back in episode 2 when we saw that 77.9% of American women experienced guilt after having an abortion. Why would we want to add guilt, add trauma, add pain to a rape victim? Is that justice? Is that compassion? Is it hard for them to carry through with the pregnancy and birth? Yes. Pregnancy is hard. Labor is, labor. It's in the name. It's hard. But do hard circumstances justify murder? This is not about the father. It's not about the moment of conception. It's about the life in the womb. Do not let yourself be distracted by this argument. The baby is the same. I am totally in favor of the death penalty and stricter rulings from judges, especially in extreme cases such as murder and rape. But why would we carry out the death penalty against an unborn child? What crime have they committed? Existing? Is that their crime? The second argument has to do with abortions to save the health of the mother or the life of the mother. And this one can be difficult to argue against because most of us are not doctors or prenatal specialists of any kind. And it sounds good and logical. But it is actually never necessary. Let me explain. Abortion is the intentional killing of a child. That is the goal of the procedure. So if the child needs to be removed from the mother at some point in order to save the mother's life, we do not need to kill the child to do that. We know this. Perhaps you know someone who needed an emergency C-section. Their life or the life of the child was at risk. Yet, abortion wasn't committed because we can actually safely deliver a child, especially in later term, via induction or a C-section. In fact, most premature births of children born after 24 weeks gestation can survive given proper medical care. Alan Guttmacher was a former president of Planned Parenthood. And he said, today it is possible for almost any patient to be brought through pregnancy alive, unless she suffers from a fatal disease such as cancer or leukemia. And if so, abortion would be unlikely to prolong, much less save the life. Do you know when he said this? 1967. And how far have our medical practices come since then? Most former abortion practitioners will acknowledge that the abortions they committed weren't ever medically necessary. Now, there are very rare cases of life-threatening pregnancies earlier than 24 weeks of gestation. Very rare. Remember how rare just this argument was? But again, even in those situations, abortion is not necessary. Sometimes the care given to the mother may result in the death of the child. But that is not the goal. And that is not a step in the procedure. Besides the fact that abortion, the intentional killing of a child, is never medically necessary, simply leaving that option open, making that option available, is an option that is too easily abused. So if we said, fine, abortion is allowed when the life or physical health of the mother is in danger. Some abortionists, even though they don't even need currently to excuse their practice, claim that every abortion is medically necessary for the health and well-being of the mother so that she can live the life she wants to live. That is how self-centered our society is. Every abortion is medically necessary because I deserve what I want. So, if we were to limit abortion to those procedures that are medically necessary, the number of abortions that fall into that category would suddenly increase. We would still be saving hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of lives. But to be clear, the excuse would be used often. Ultimately, as Christians, we should know that none of the reasons or excuses for abortion really matter. Why? Because all people are made in the image of God. So, we value human life, which means we must promote and defend that life. We cannot make excuses for murder, whether it is a person in the womb or a person in hospice care. Hopefully, you feel slightly more prepared or just reinvigorated to take on these arguments, whether it be with a fellow Christian or a progressive pro-choicer. And that brings us to the prayer requests and suggestions to wrap up our episode. So for yourself, pray that God would equip you in these discussions, that He would give you opportunities to share your love for Him and your love for people made in His image, that He would create opportunities for you to truly value human life and to share that with others, both within and outside of the womb. For our society, pray that God would bless the March for Life this week here in Canada, that many witnesses in the cities and online would be moved, not just emotionally moved, but moved in their minds to consider these arguments and these babies, and that life might be celebrated in our culture, truly celebrated. For Canadian Rubies, just pray that we can continue to use our platform to celebrate life and to celebrate the creator of life. He is the reason we're here, and He is the reason that this topic matters. He is the reason these babies matter. May that be the focus. I would like to conclude with our Bible verse for today that focuses on kind of a reminder of the value of man, and that reminder is found in Psalm 8. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him? And the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with honor and glory. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands, and you have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth.